And Lawrence, away we go. Let's jump right into it. The first thing I got to do is do a huge shout out to the beautiful music that brings us in. Folks, that's Alex Kusteruk, who's just one of the geniuses of the fiddle, Métis fiddle empire out there. You can look him up, alexkusteruk.com. We've had him on a number of our shows before, and he very generously, through the kindness and the relationship we have as both artists and as friends, allows us to utilize his music. Because as you know, in the world of copyright, it's better that you have the ability to utilize it. Otherwise, they shut you down in an awful hurry. Big shout out, as I want to say, because Lawrence, we haven't really been doing that as we're leaning now into really thanking our sponsors. Both the Métis Nation of Alberta, who's a kind contributor, as well as very much to the Steel River Group, located here in Southern Alberta, who very generously donate to our program. And Lawrence, we're at 64. We're on our way to upwards of 10,000 views. You know, the only thing I think that's been longer on social media and television is The Simpsons.
Yeah, well, I thought you were going to say 10,000 hours. So we would have mastered it. 10,000 episodes, yeah.
I don't think this is like your ballet career. I honestly don't think at 10,000 views we've mastered it. But I do know I'm enjoying it, and every time we get a chance to talk, we're bringing ourselves a little closer to a better awareness of sharing the connection when it comes to gathering and our knowledge of the Métis community. Lawrence, it's a fun ride. Some of the things I want to jump into are going to be about sports. They're going to be about some of the actions of a lot of the Indigenous people around our communities. I want to talk some government. We're going to throw in one of our scams. The 1901 census. I don't think we've had that conversation before, talking about enumerators. And I know we're going to hit on a few of those things that are really important. But right off the bat, Lawrence, for all of our listeners who are just listening and you can't see it, Lawrence, what are you wearing?
Oh, yeah. Well, we just had the season finale of Yellowstone, so I was pretty excited to see that, but pretty lackluster episode, as far as I'm concerned.
Now, is it the Dutton or Sutton? Dutton Ranch,
Dutton.
isn't it?
Yes, that's right. John Dutton.
I'm surprised you're not wearing a cowboy hat right now. Now,
I haven't taking it a little too far, I think, if I won't make that
and or wearing a jean jacket and looking like you're ready to fight. I haven't seen the show. Lawrence, we've talked about this a little bit before. By wearing their T-shirt, it sure is paying a bit of respect to the fact that that's good TV. And, I know I'm probably going to get an email from one of our listeners saying, Ross, what's going on here? How have you not put this show on?
Well, for all we know, they could be canceling, the whole series. So, I mean, wouldn't that be awful?
Somebody will get offended.
Yeah, but no, it's a very good episode, and season, and we're very excited to see the new stuff. Not sure about the 1883 Tim McGraw stuff, but that's just me.
Yeah, and and we talked about it before. I'm not too sure where I'm supposed to jump in. Do I jump in? I'm being told, get in on Yellowstone, get in at the beginning. And I guess that's just one of those commitments that I have to make. There's a lot of Hallmark that's watched around our house. Yeah, I mean,
our hope is that Game of Thrones, the prequel comes, but, from what I hear, they canceled it and now they're, back into production. So we'll see what happens.
Well, winter is coming from what I understand. And in fact, folks, for any of you in Canada, I reported on, I think it was last week, that 14 of the 15 coldest places in the world were registered in Canada. And folks, it dove down hard again. And I was out shoveling this morning and it was absolutely freezing.
Yeah, I mean, that's why people kind of know I lost my voice because of the cold. I can't handle this anymore, but it's just life. But
I just assumed you got into a bar fight.
Yeah.
And now that you're carrying the Yellowstone banner even further with your T-shirt, yeah, I just figured you got into a bar fight. A real cute story that came out this last week, and I think a lot of the people have heard it because it was really popular in the media, but there was the NHL, the Canucks gear manager. They were down in Seattle, and he was there participating in the Flames game as they were playing, Vancouver was playing Seattle. And he sort of could hear this rapping as he's cleaning up gear for the players in between periods. And this lady's holding up a phone, and the phone says, in bold letters, "I'm a doctor. You have a very suspicious mole on the back of your neck. I think it should be cancer. You should have it looked at. And at first he looked at it, from what I understand, is like, well, I don't really have time to deal with that. Like, I'm working. She didn't make any more bone of it. There was no more conversation. She wasn't asking for anything. I guess 5 days later, he ends up going to see his doctor, and his doctor's like, well, thank goodness that you came in and that the woman noticed that. So they sent out a little bit of a press release saying, hey, for the individual who participated by coming to the game, who was the fan, we'd love to connect with you. And it sounds like she's a physician in training. And how wonderful is it to read that the team donated $10,000 towards her education?
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. I mean, she saved the guy's life and by her observation, and that's what they're trained to do, right? These doctors.
I guess they just can never turn it off. And I don't think I've ever sat that close behind a hockey team's bench. So maybe I'd be looking for those things too. That was never the type of nursing that I did, but maybe that's what we should be doing. Lawrence, okay, folks, Lawrence and I have a lot of experience when it comes to paying attention to things. So if any of you are looking to get rid of any tickets that are directly behind the players' benches and you want us to look for concerns that we can find, folks, send your tickets right out here. We're happy to try and contribute the same way that woman did.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get on camera, that's the place. But, it is a stinky row right behind.
Yeah, and you know what? The coaches are always in front of you and the players are always moving around in front of you. I don't know. I think that'd be annoying.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I'd want to be by the penalty boxes because that's when they're, swearing at each other and swearing at the refs. And
then you could just throw your beer at them.
Yeah.
That's probably the quickest way to get thrown out of the game. Flames, I think it was only a few games ago. They had 26 shots in their second period, which is tying a franchise record. Lawrence, some teams don't even get that many shots in a game.
Yeah, who knows what the other team is doing? I mean, if they're asleep at the wheel, that's what will happen. It's a lot.
Your knowledge of the game, Lawrence, always super exceeds. We banter around quite a bit about the Oilers and Flames. Nobody has yet called me for my opinion.
No, and they should, right? You're like a pro. I've seen you with skates on, right? But.
Well, most of the time I was out there, I was just trying to knock you down.
Yeah.
Fun story that I wanted to talk about was, we'd had this conversation that I was taking that course at MIT, and something I'd come across when I was away recently was I knew that this hotel had a robot, and that robot, based on what I was studying in the world of artificial intelligence and robotics, I ended up calling down to the front desk and I said, I need a comb. Now, I didn't necessarily need a comb, but I wanted to see how this was all going to play out. And it was about 5 minutes later, and all of a sudden the phone rings, and I know what's going on. So my wife's sort of surprised, but I walk to the door and I open it up, and there's a robot standing right there. And it's the conversation of anthropomorphizing robots. How are they making them a little bit more real, a little bit, try and make them feel a little more human so that you have, you understand that the roles that they have when it comes to sort of serving. And in this case, this little robot traveled from the front desk, and he all of a sudden says, I'm at your room. I'm here to receive something. And the little top opens up, and inside was my comb. And I grab it and I close the top, and the robot says, is there anything else you need? Could I tell you a joke? And it ended up, I did tell me a joke. What's a robot's favorite song? Row, row, row your boat. So the little lights shined, turned around, and off it went. And, there's a lot of conversation about, well, are robots stealing jobs? Well, in this case, this is a rather, almost unnecessary thing that they were being sent up to do, is to bring me this comb. But we're starting to see how there's somebody who has to program that, who has to manage that. So it's creating more jobs out there. There's a lot more opportunities. And especially, folks, if you're looking to get into a career, getting into the world of computers and studying data science and artificial intelligence, it's taken off. There's jobs everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, one step closer to an episode of Star Wars, right? All those robots walking around, and somebody has to maintain them.
I can't wait till there's a little robot out there called Lawrence. This one was called Priscilla. They'd given it this really pretty name. And going back to a little bit of the Indigenous conversation, Lawrence, I was reading this week, and it's a very challenging story for this gentleman, but in a way, he's still trying to look at it in as positive as he can. But he's Indigenous Nunavut hunter, and his name is Ernie Itak. And he was headed out trying to follow along with some of the traditional trappings and the traditional hunting from up in Nunavut. Well, he got trapped in a blizzard and he was stuck there for 5 days. So from what I understand, he had fired up a snow machine and off he went. And he was a certain distance away and he had some trouble getting it started, tried to get it started again. Well, realized the storm is coming, so he's got to hunker down. So as he's trying to do his work, realizes he can't find his way back. Obviously, there's probably no cell phone coverage where he is, which Find Your iPhone probably would have solved that for you and I trying to find our way to each other's houses. But in his case, so he started to build an igloo, but the blizzard was so bad, blew his mittens away. And the next thing you know, he's struggling with it and his hands are starting to freeze. And, interestingly, and I enjoyed reading this part of it, that he was wearing traditional hunter clothing, caribou, bearded seal. And under normal circumstances, this keeps you really, really warm. He has antler sunglasses because it was, approximately minus 30. But, when you lose your mittens, they're gone. And unfortunately, he ended up losing both his hands to frostbite.
Yeah, that's a tough way to lose your hands for sure. I'm sure it was really cold out there, But.
There was a point there where I was reading that he talked about he was sort of woken up by a wolverine sniffing around. So he ended up making his way back to his snow machine. As the weather cleared after 5 days, he was able to navigate and he walked out back to his hometown where they ended up finding him frozen hands and they flew him to Winnipeg, where unfortunately, but it's nice, as sad as that story is, I'm so impressed by people who are still following a traditional historic practice. And that's one of the things that we encourage here. You and I may not be so much involved with sustenance and hunting as such, but I like and respect the fact that that is a way of life and continues to be a way of life for a lot of people.
Yeah, where I grew up in Prince George, it's pretty common to harvest and certainly guys my age go out and do it. And they pass that knowledge on to the next generation. And, so I had uncles that kind of prepared us. But, when you move to the big city, jetting off to theater and a hotel and all that stuff, you kind of lose that sense. And, we're trying to sort of regain that knowledge so we can bring it to the next generation. And hopefully we can do that. Well,
and I think, the M&A does a great job of sharing the information, passing it along. We're still trying to capture that information from our elders, but you and I have commented on this a lot of times. The provincial government for the longest time sort of, there was really no Métis south of Red Deer. Well, all the historical information, artifacts, continued sustenance, the harvesting, actually there was, and as that conversation continues to unfold in your role at the regional level of connecting with the province, and as our constitution comes through, I think we're going to start to see a little bit more of that as it engages. And that's one of the things I wanted to jump on, Lawrence, because you've got a pretty strong familiarity when it comes to your role at the regional level. The Alberta government in December of 2021, I guess we could call it, on the 14th announced that it's updating its draft to the kindergarten to grade 6 curriculum. So Rupert's Land Institute, who's the strong affiliate with the Métis Nation that sets the mandates in education, training, and research, they have those conversations with the provincial government. Now, Lauren Gladue, who's the CEO of Rupert's Land currently, made a comment that no history of Canada can exclude the historic and contemporary contributions of the Métis people. And we look forward to providing our input on the Métis components of the updated curriculum. And he went on to point out that there is no greater tool to bridge reconciliation than what is taught in the classroom. And right now, Alberta has the opportunity to teach the real story of this land. And we are eager to provide input on the Métis experience. Lawrence, what's your experience when it comes to, that conversation with the government and how much does it change, as new governments or new leaders come in?
Well, I can give you a real short answer. Government bad. Alberta working group curriculum good.
Couldn't that come in an email?
Yeah, but we had a chance, and government of Alberta had a chance when he changed that curriculum, a year and a half ago. we had an Aboriginal working group that worked on that curriculum. First Nations and Métis had all their input into that. And the Alberta government chose to kind of move around it. And now they're coming back to it because of certainly residential schools and pressure, I'm sure, political. And now they're just starting to redress it. And, I think it's wonderful, to be quite honest, because it should have never been left in the first place. But, hopefully we get there. And we, as at Rupert's Land, because I am a board member there, we did make recommendations for these curriculum changes.
So it's our responsibility in a way to continue to bring the conversation to them. But when you've made them aware, then it becomes the province's responsibility to act on it. Do you find that, as leadership changes, all of a sudden they just set up new boards, they set up new committees, and all of a sudden we start over from ground zero?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it went. Certainly when the Kenney government moved in, they had a different sort of take on what curriculum should look like here in Alberta. And certainly forgot about all those other things that was worked on the previous years. But now they're coming back to it, and certainly comments about, event center, the mayor here in Calgary, trying to forget about the planning there and trying to, stipulate more stuff. It's kind of the same thing. It's a change in government. Sometimes they don't support those things that have already been set.
Well, and I think, again, as I continue to, evaluate this information, if all we're trying to do is continue to start the conversation. I often run into this where people are like, well, I don't want my kindergarten age child to all of a sudden be taught everything about residential schools. Well, then be a part of the conversation. But I think what's happening is we're trying to introduce the conversation of who are the Métis people. And that'll be a part of our discussion when I get up to the 1901 census. Or let's jump into it right now. In the 1901 census, which was the fourth Canadian census, and why we jumped over 1, 2, and 3, I don't know. I was just reading about it. But as I brought up last week, we were talking about the Canadian Archives and its identification of the Métis people within the Indigenous community. And this, as I continue to search a little bit every week, the 1901 census, which the enumerators collected information on 5.3 million individuals, distributed through all of the following agencies, the Indian agencies, as well as all of the Irish, Indian, French, the Swedish, all people in all of the communities, or so was their attempt. But they were asking people to indicate their ethnic origin. So again, were you Irish? Were you Indian? Were you French? Or also, what race were you? So they were looking at the term of breed. That was one of the terms that was on there. Half-breed. We've talked about this before. Is it offensive? Well, somehow you have to, or do you personally want to find a bit of a delineation to be able to say, I have a bit of this background and I have a bit of this background. Unless people are putting, a derogatory swear word in front of it, I don't tend to find the term offensive because it's part of conversation. What did breed mean? What did half-breed mean? And, on our program before, we've had my own father who was sort of called that as a nickname as he was growing up. And he was never offended. He knew who his friends were and he knew why and for what purpose they were saying it. And I'm not saying that we don't need to continue to revisit how we, explore this. But by the same token, if it's healthy conversation, it becomes greater awareness. So as they talked about this, when they were doing the census, there were 351 commissioners appointed by the government, and there were 8,800 enumerators assigned to clearly defined areas. Sometimes the Northwest Mounted Police were used as enumerators. 206 districts, 3,200 sub-districts. I mean, I'd be interested to see what the map was, to see where all these were, but cities, towns, groups, townships, Indian reserves, and less well-defined areas. But of course, when the enumerators would be going on to Aboriginal, Indigenous lands, the people there weren't really that interested in sharing all of the information.
Yeah, and also the enumerators didn't do that wonderful of a job either. We certainly look at that when we do our membership, or how you say, our citizenship, when we go through all the genealogy, and we see the mistakes that they make, and some of it is written in ink that you can't even read or even decipher too. And there's a lot of that, and inaccuracies and ages and all those things. But it was very, very tough to do it at the same time. But, our Aboriginal groups did not want to be a part of this big machine called Canada. So why would we say that, oh, we're here and this is my name, right? And this is my family. What are you going to do to me now? Right?
Well, yeah, that's true. The next thing you know, you're going to be driven out of your land and trying to get away. And at least they know how many of you there are.
Yeah, and if you look at the terms of half-breed and all those things, and it's good that you brought that up, because it's certainly a big discussion amongst us, especially our seniors, because a lot of them do actually identify as half-breeds, and some consider it a very derogatory term too, because they were certainly discriminated using that word. And so there's certainly a hypersensitivity to it. But the government of Canada would label you as half-breed, HB, and then they would checkbox see a French breed, Scotch breed, or English breed right beside that too. So, they were kind of really deciphering who was Métis at that time.
Yeah, and I don't know if, again, we don't know if that was necessarily purposeful, but in order to manage the genealogy of and the anthropology of a community and continue to understand where, cultural lines, boundaries, the relationships are, you do need that information. But, how often do we find the government's tax agencies are asking us for information now? And it's, well, why? You didn't even use the information you had previously. So, what are you capturing? Can you give us some idea as to what it's going to be used for? And, that just comes down to better management by the government to say, here's what we're looking for. And, in the plight that we're dealing with now, which culture, is affected or reacts differently to vaccinations, and how does it, the epidemiology, how does it benefit that community? That's the information that we're trying to share. But, I guess the more data you have is a great place to work. And I work in the world of data. So capturing it, I just guess when it comes down to all of a sudden asking these cultures, these Indian reservations at the time, about them and about everybody in their community, I can clearly see how that would be threatening. And it's funny, the government, I can't remember when, I think it was in the 50s, destroyed all of the original documents because they put everything onto microfilm. Well, in the world of data, microfilm doesn't necessarily last. So all of that useful data has essentially been washing away off of the microfilm. And now when you try to look at it, it's very hard to extrapolate. So hopefully we got all the information we could, but here we are.
Yeah, and these nations, they define themselves as a distinct nation. So, us, we want to be called Métis because that's the term that we came up with. That's something that we want to be called. And certainly people have a deciphering opinion about that. They say, well, we're Michif. That's a traditional word. And that's not wrong either. But, we're kind of steering away from that half-breed term because that was a term that was given to us. It didn't come from us as a people.
Yeah, actually, and that's a really good point. Take back the term that you want. Oh, Lawrence, for all of you who are just listening, the light is on. Leighton, hopefully you've thrown out a big buzzing siren to tell everybody it's the scam conversation. One of the ones that popped into my email here recently, Lawrence, and I know we've brought this up. Folks, Leighton, if you could throw it up there, don't click on these things. This one's from the United States Postal Service. And if you're, for those of you who can't see it, the word delivery is spelt wrong. It doesn't have an E. I don't think the USPS, when they send out these kind of emails, makes this mistake. And of course, they're baiting you. Oh, there's a package and you just have to pay $2.99 and we will deliver it to you. So they want you to click. They want you to put that information in there. Look and read the email. And if you look at this one, you'll even see that the $sign is behind the $2.99. That's not the way we do it in North America. When you follow back to see where the trail of this email came, it came from the other side of the world. And this is a very common, typical scam. So folks, if you're not anticipating receiving a package, don't start clicking around. Maybe even wait for the package to arrive, and then you can find out a little bit more. But honestly, these are what they're doing. And as soon as they start to get a little bit of information and then they unravel the thread, these threat actors are looking to try and exploit your information. And if you do pay that $2.99, rest assured, they're going to try and find a way to get more money out of you. So that's our little scam for the day. Lawrence, let's jump on to some other interesting stories. One of the ones being to carry on from our conversation last week where we were talking about the wonderful actress, Betty White, and her long tenure, and the celebration was coming up for her 100th birthday, and her comment about that she lives every day and every comment and everything she does and looks for the positive in it. And such a sad loss that 3 weeks before her 100th birthday, she passed away.
Yeah, I mean, I already bought the ticket when you guys were talking about it before, and I was like, oh, set the date, let's go.
You were on your way, I'm sure, because I think they're still planning on going ahead. So folks, you heard it here. Lawrence will be attending that event, and we can look for him on the red carpet with all of the rest of the celebrities. Are you going as Ryan Reynolds date because his wife doesn't want to go along? I loved his comment about, folks, don't put my previous relationships in the media as a little bit of an homage to the time that he got to spend with Betty White, and making a cute statement about them having her having a crush on him over all those years. And I know for anybody, as you read, she was the consummate, most kind, pleasant, perfect actress with a long 60-year history of being on TV and movies.
Yeah, she will be missed for sure. We always know about her Icus strength. So many quotes that we see on LinkedIn and Facebook and everywhere about what she's said and what she's done for at least the women's movement.
Yeah, and for Hollywood of doing it respectfully, staying committed and bringing new actors and actresses up. So, folks, big temperature swings. Just the other day, and folks, for those of you who get the headaches out there, don't immediately think that you have COVID. Lord knows, as soon as I get a headache, I'm like, well, it finally caught up to me. Actually, these temperature swings that happen in Canada, often those are what lead to it, these pressure changes that give us these headaches. There's enough headaches that have been happening as a result of all the flight disruptions around the world, whether that be because of COVID and affecting, our flight attendants and flight stewards who are doing their job of taking care of us in the air. Perry works for WestJet. How much time is spent on the phone?
Oh, and she's all the time canceling flights right now. It's crazy. But it's just, people also don't buy the insurance. Buy the insurance, right? So you make sure you get your refund at least.
That's a really good point, folks. You heard it here from a professional. Spend that few extra dollars, especially at this time. You never know what's going to be popping up or what you're going to be dealing with. Thank you to everybody who jumped on to watch me on the Hootenanny this year as a result of everything being canceled. I didn't get a chance to play with Memphis and the Grand, but I ended up getting a chance to play on our Hootenanny. Lawrence, it's always great to see you on there. It's very kind of you to jump on and support a Métis artist who's out there. I look forward to when you and I are back on stage doing our little thing. And, maybe this is the year, Lawrence.
Yeah, it's an election year for me. I got to hit the stage eventually, and I don't know how I'm going to do it. It's going to be really, really tough. But we'll see.
Well, yeah, especially when I'm backing you up in my smooth, soft vocals to back up your Jason Aldean cover songs. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Sadly, it looks like the Flames Arena deal may have come to a close because the deadline was passed and we never got it all taken care of. It's a tough time. Where is money best spent?
Yeah, it's going to be tough for all of us, I think, just to get over these next few months. Hopefully Omicron doesn't affect us too much, especially, cancellations and all arenas that are going to sit empty and all those things.
Yeah, that money loss, the loss for the economy, for the people who are supposed to be working there. These are all often places that our youth get their first work opportunities and the long established ushers who, this is part of their their income, their time. So folks, think about all these people. Think about those as those restaurants are having their challenges, and make sure you reach out to all of our elders, to everybody within your community. Folks, this is going to continue to be challenging as we move forward, but here on the Squeaky Wheel, we really appreciate it. I saw some nice shout outs from Workforce Forward. I know, Lawrence, you have a role within there, a strong conference that's coming, and it may end up being virtual. I think it's right at the start of February, but really works to connect the Indigenous community with the with industry, different businesses out there. So big shout out to them. Thank you for shouting out to us when it comes to our conversation from a Métis perspective. And thank you to everybody behind the scenes. I know I've shouted out to our sponsors already, but Lawrence, I just want to say one more time, thank you again for being a part of this conversation, that we get to share both our opinions, both our awareness, both our knowledge. You help me learn every week as we continue our conversation. So folks, if you want to find us a little bit more, tsw@thesqueakywheel.ca to send us an email. Find us at thesqueakywheel.ca. You can find us on all sorts of different social medias. Look for Lawrence and I on LinkedIn. We'd be happy to share the conversation and join you so you can continue to follow our profiles, the businesses, the interactions that we have. And it's real important that you click that subscribe button. It means a lot to us. If there's other sponsors who are out there who are interested in participating and supporting Indigenous conversation, you know where to find us. So from all of us here, from behind the scenes, from Lawrence, from Ross Memphis Pambert, thank you, and keep the wheel squeaking. The Squeaky Wheel is brought to you by the Squeaky Wheel Company, co-hosted by the President, Lawrence Gervais, from M&A Region 3, and the Captain, Ross Memphis Pambert. Our program is broadcast from Calgary, in Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, which is part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We also acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of Treaty 7, Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda, whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. You can always reach us for comment about our programming by email at tsw@thesqueakywheel.ca or find us on our website, www.squeakywheel.ca, and our socials. For our comments, it is our focus to recognize all of our First Nations and Indigenous friends, share a connection with Métis settlements, and listen to and show respect to our Métis brothers and sisters and families. Here at the Squeaky Wheel, we give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for her time she allows us to be here and share her bounty. From all of us at the Squeaky Wheel, Danse.